So now I can take the old lady glasses off. That was pretty deep, pretty serious. Don't mean to bring you down, but I think it's important for you guys to hear the lesson that you don't have to be perfect, that perfection is not a goal, that's reality. And, you know, I try to put on a happy face and to be positive and inspirational for you guys because I am very blessed. I wake up every day thankful for what I have and for what's gotten me here. Doesn't mean it's easy. And I miss my husband every day. And it's going to be a long journey, especially for my girls. But I got to keep moving forward. Do you guys have any questions, either about my story or questions about the Terry Foundation, where we're going, questions about my job? Kyle?
What's the, I guess, most exciting experience you had serving on the interview panel? I guess the most memorable moment you've had?
So really, I think I'd have to say Texas State. And it's not just one experience, but it's the experience of the last, 12 years now, I guess. Being able to interview that very first class, and then to go to the banquet and see the first 16, and then to go back and interview the second class, and then go to the next banquet, and it's 32. And then to do that every year after that, and then to see that first class graduate, and along the way to see them figure out how to do student organization, and to watch them decide, hey, we need mentors and mentees, and then to watch that unfold so that now they have grands and littles and they have families. It's just been really, really fulfilling. And for me, so I sort of lived vicariously through those Texas State Terry Scholars because they had what I would have loved to have had as a Terry Scholar. You know, there was 6 of us at A&M the first year. I didn't know any of the others until probably April of my freshman year when we got called to the financial aid office. We got in a van and drove down here to Houston for our first banquet with Mr. Terry and the other directors. I'll never forget it. It was a very intimidating dinner. So, and then over the years, we got to know other scholars. Eventually, we started the picnic. I think the picnic was my second or third year. And then they brought in the folks from UT Austin. And so that was exciting, but we just didn't do stuff together. So for me, watching that family grow at Texas State, and I know the same thing happened here. You know, it started small, and then it's become bigger every year, and now you guys are like 130. That's pretty exciting. It's also a little scary for me because, you know, I had the benefit of knowing Mr. Terry and feeling that directly from him, and so getting bigger has been hard for me, and especially because I feel the responsibility of carrying on that legacy. I feel like I'm the bridge between what Mr. Terry instilled in us and what I want you guys to carry on to the next generation. And I just think that's harder. My hope is that you guys will have the opportunity at banquets and at picnic and at service events in the Houston area to form those relationships, but it really has to work both ways. I mean, the alumni are willing, but you guys have to be willing to reach out. I love the Terry Tap shirt. That's the first time I had seen that. And so there's actually an advisory board group right now that's working on the TAP list. We know that it's not perfect. We know that there's improvements that can be made. And so there's a group of 12 to 15 alumni right now that have started meeting and talking about what can we do to make that more effective, to make it easier for you guys to find an alumni to connect with, and then what does that look like? Other questions?
Do you ever see the foundation expanding beyond the state of Texas?
No, we can't. That was another beauty about Mr. Terry. He was very smart in the way he wrote the charter. And so the charter for the foundation states that we can only do public education in the state of Texas, and we can only give scholarships for higher education. So we will never build buildings. We will never do scholarships for private schools like, you know, Rice and TCU, SMU. It'll always be public education in Texas. So that makes my job really easy. It's very narrow. We do one thing and we do it really well. You know, I've learned that in the nonprofit world, sometimes you'll have, you know, a charity that their purpose is to do good works. Well, you know, what does that mean? There's a lot of, the Houston Endowment here in town is huge. And they have to approve grants, and they do grant writing for arts and education and health and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And those are great. It's wonderful. You know, maybe you guys have a passion and someday you can start something like that to benefit others. But education is what the Terry Foundation does, and that's what we're going to keep doing, and hopefully we'll do it really well.
In the wake of, because I know our year is one of the first years to have a semester abroad,
Mm-hmm.
whoever had the idea, just bless them, thank you. We actually have two Terrys are in Spain, and they update Snapchats and they're enjoying it, they're loving it.
That's awesome.
And in the wake of that, I think, and later on in the future, or not the immediate future, that Terry will actually go on to pay for grad school to go beyond the traditional 4 undergrad.
So that's a good question. It's a question I get asked a lot is, because really, you know, when Mr. and Mrs. Terry passed away, what happened is that they had invested, set aside money into the endowment for the foundation for many, many years, but when they passed away, they still had private wealth in their own estates. And so, because Mr. Terry and then Mrs. Terry 6 months later both passed away in 2012, the entirety of their estates in the will was endowed to the foundation. And at the time, it's like 1/3 in the endowment, 2/3 in the estates. So that's why transfer program to bring more students in, more schools, adding, you know, Sam Houston and Galveston and UT Arlington and UTEP. Unfortunately, the market is not being very friendly to us right now. You know, I don't know if you watch the stock market, but it's very volatile right now, and so that affects the asset value. But to your point for graduate school, we are always looking at how are we going to spend our money? And if we're going to spend more money, you have choices. Do you add more students to the schools that you're already at? Do you add more schools? Do you invest more in the students that you have, which is like study abroad? Or do you look at things like graduate school? Here's my job is to always go back to founder's intent. What would Howard Terry have wanted to do? And Howard Terry believed very much that it's the first undergraduate degree that's the barrier breaker. If you have an undergraduate degree, you can go and get a job and be successful. And more importantly, if you have an undergraduate degree that you have obtained debt-free, if you want to go on to graduate school, you can incur that debt. And if you're going to graduate school, you're probably going to get a high-paying job and you'll be able to pay that back. So the trade-off is what's the cost of an undergraduate education and how many of graduate school. What's the cost of going to graduate school? Doctor, lawyer, you pick it. How many students could I get an undergraduate degree for the cost of one graduate school degree? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it all just goes back to founder's intent. Jody Kosegi asked me yesterday, what happens to the foundation if, I don't know if you guys are into politics and listen to some of the stuff that's going on, but one of the ideas out there is free public education for everybody. And I hadn't thought about it. She's like, what happens to the Terry Foundation if education for everybody is free? Well, it still wouldn't be free. What the proposal would be, tuition and fees would be free. Well, you still gotta live somewhere, you still gotta eat, you gotta pay your bills. So we could still support a lot of students, books, all of that stuff. But I actually told her, if undergraduate education becomes free, then we have to reassess, and then maybe we look at graduate school. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, and, you know, hopefully you guys understand that concept, that first undergraduate degree is the barrier breaker between you being able to get a good career, a good high-paying job. The graduate degree would be great, and I want to encourage you guys to think about that. We need more good students to continue on to graduate school, but hopefully you've earned the skills and the wherewithal in the 4 years or 3 years for undergraduate that you can be successful.
And just to note on that also, some job positions will actually help pay for a master's or doctorate's degree once you've been hired. So once you have that bachelor's degree and you get a job, that job can also help you to attain a higher degree.
And there are things like fellowships for graduate school. One of the things I'd love to do is write letters of recommendation for our Terry scholars who are going on to things like graduate school. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of them lately, and some of those students end up getting to go to graduate school for free. I mean, you guys have what it takes to be successful at every level in your life, and so, yeah. So we've got Terry scholars that are going to graduate school because someone is paying them because they see the potential.
How did the study abroad stipend come about?
So that's a good question. So in 2014, this is probably more than you want to know, but it's the only way I know how to explain it. So in 2014, in September, the market was doing really well. So it's probably no surprise that Mr. Terry was heavily invested in the energy sector, so oil and gas, things like that. And you know, the price of oil was at an all-time high, and so our assets in September of 2014 were at an all-time high, $800 million. And that's everything all in to one bucket. And at that point, we were allocating about $20 million in scholarships. And so for a nonprofit, you have to spend or give away 5% of your corpus, of your endowment. And so at that point, we were way under target for where we needed to be. And we knew we needed to bump up the target. So we knew we had transfer scholarships, which was adding to the census. And same old question, it was, are you gonna add more students to your existing schools? Are you gonna add schools? Are you gonna invest more in the students that you have? Or are you gonna do something else? And so we did a little bit of all of that. So study abroad was a way to invest in our students that we already had, that we already knew were a good bet, a good investment. We also knew that, you know, you guys live in a global world, and almost every job that any one of you will have is going to have some sort of international component to it. And we had Terrys that had studied abroad, you know, from early on, because we could always use one of our stipends. You just had to fit it in. And you know, self-evaluation letters, thank you letters. I've never read a letter from a student that studied abroad that just hasn't said it was life-changing. It changes your perspective on the world. So we knew that it was going to be a good investment. So we had, I think, 250 students study abroad. At this point this year, we've got, I think, 160 something approved so far for the next year. So I love it. I think it's a great thing. I encourage all of you to do it. When I was walking across campus, I saw February 4th, study abroad fair. Something is happening on campus.
11 to 2.
11 to 2. Yay. Where's it at?
I want to say it's in this little area, but it usually is. Yes, the Rockwell Pavilion. But don't quote me.
Yeah. If I saw the signs, you guys can see the signs. Study abroad. Definitely a good idea. Anything else? Anybody that needs to go, feel free to go. I don't want to keep you long, but I'm here. Got questions? No?
Actually, I do.
Yep.
How did you feel like when you first got your first C? Like, how did you move forward from that?
So here's another, this is a funny story. So what I didn't talk about was I was a student athlete, which I think is also one of the things that Mr. Terry and I kind of resonated on because he'd gone on a football scholarship. I didn't have a scholarship, but I walked on to the cross-country team. So for my first 2 years at A&M, I ran cross-country and track. And so you can imagine that I had a pretty strict diet. I was burning a lot of calories and tried to be really careful about what I put into my body. So my first C, I went to the Commons, to the, I don't know, what do you call it, the snack bar.
Ice cream bar.
I got a pizza, I got a Snickers, I think I had a Dr. Pepper. Yeah, it was pretty devastating. I don't know what happened in that transition. I just realized, guys, this is really hard. Like I'm doing my best here. So, you know, I think I ended up with a C in physics and in thermo and in statics and dynamics, and there may be, I had 2 semesters of physics, so probably both of those semesters. So I had a handful of C's. And you know, this is coming from somebody that had never had anything but an A on report cards up until that point, so, that's where, you know, put those tools in your toolbox. You gotta have balance in your life, you gotta be realistic about how you're gonna measure your success, and that can be just for you. It can't be for the person next to you or the person behind you. You know, if you feel like you've done your best and put in your best effort, and you got a C, I was happy to get those C's. Never got a D. I was happy to get those C's. It's all about perspective, I think. You know, I think you know, I mean, you guys all know when you get a bad grade on a test because you didn't study, or you get a bad grade on a test because you studied your ass off. I mean, you know, so you just have to, you have to be willing to calibrate that on your own. Nobody else can do that for you. I can tell you all day a C is not the end of the world, but if you don't believe that yourself, you know, that you gotta be confident. You have to like yourself and be confident in yourself before anybody else is gonna believe in you. And get a tutor. I mean, don't be above. Get a tutor.
Did you say study some dynamics together?
No.
Oh, you're saying study some dynamics.
Yeah.
I was like, no wonder you got to
No, even separately. Even separately. Yeah. It was hard, man. It was hard. That's why I'm not an engineer anymore. I can't even help my 16-year-old with her pre-cal homework anymore. Very sad. But I loved it. I really loved what I did. I never thought that I could walk away from that career, because I loved every day going to work and being on the construction site and, you know, watching a gas station go up. But, you know, sometimes your priorities shift. It's all about what's important to you.
I have a question. You seem very, very good at able to take a step back and put your life into perspective. So you organize it into phase 1, 2, and 3. So I think that's a really useful skill. So how did you sharpen that skill? What are some things you do maybe daily or weekly or monthly that helps you to get your orientation in your phases?
You know, for me, I have to credit my faith. That's the only thing that has allowed me to be standing right here after the year that I've had. It's the only thing that gives me perspective. But I don't want to I'm happy to talk to you about that on an individual basis, and but I don't want to tell everybody that that's the way, because you each have to have respect and value all of our differences. You know, and my divine may not be your divine, but for me, that's what keeps me grounded, because I know for me, it's not all about me. It's about something much bigger. And I didn't always have that perspective. I look back on my life, and I think those years of preparation in San Antonio where I was able to work on that. You know, I'm in a women's group at my church right now that's a real mix of people that have been in the faith for a long time and people that are kind of struggling. And somebody asked, how did you get there? Well, just like I had to study for thermodynamics. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you have to be willing to invest some time in. And this probably is not the time in your life that you can do that. I was blessed with the opportunity and the time to really study and reflect and think about that on a global perspective. If you can make time in your life for that, that's what's going to help you stay balanced. But again, that's for me. I think surrounding yourself with good people who can keep you in check. You know, we all know when we're around people that maybe throw our compass off balance. And so, yeah, good people in my life and a strong faith. All right, it's been a pleasure, guys. You made it.